The Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. With your hosts, Joe Bond.
You're awful.
And AJ Applegarth.
It's Sin Shu Chu. It's a mouthful.
All right. Welcome to the Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. My name is Joe Bond, founder of FantasySixPack.net. With me, as usual, Mr. Card Troubles, unfortunately, AJ Applegarth.
Always something, man.
I guess I could say how's it going, but I think we already know.
Great. It's
sounds
so
awesome.
Great. So great. Just leave it at that. Great.
Yeah, it sounds like a lovely day for you.
Multiple exclamation points added to the end of that. Great.
And multiple
some sarcastic, some not.
expletives as well.
Yes.
Yes.
That would work. I would be okay with that.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, we are continuing our fantasy football draft coverage for the 2021 fantasy football season. This week we're having Bob Lung join us. Not gonna talk too long here at the beginning, but let's at least do our beer of the week, man.
Beer.
All right, what you got to drown this day away?
Well, I'm starting with something a little bit on the lighter side from what I usually would be indulging in, and that is a Fancy Papers from Cigar City. 6.5%, Strata, Idaho 7. So yeah, I don't think I've had this one yet from them, and
I have not heard it.
Decided I was going to get it. So we'll
all
see.
Right,
here we go.
Like you swirl it and melt every time.
It's good.
All right.
Oh yeah.
It's beer. It's good. So I'm drinking one from Kushwa Brewing Company. It's called 8.5 Emojis, and the can has like a whole bunch of emojis and stuff on it. It's kind of funny looking. I should give this one a 4 1/4. It's a New England style double IPA. It's a 8%er. It's a solid one, man. Nelson and Citra hops. So anything that's got Citra in it, man, I'm a huge fan of. It's just It's a nice like light crisp hop, in my opinion. So it's a good one. Cheers.
Cheers. See, we're both rocking our SFB shirts here as well tonight. So.
Yeah, mine's from 9, so it's the Mario. It's the Mario one. Like going backwards here. Yours is last year with toys.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Optimus.
Yeah, I didn't get one this year. I heard they were gonna make one for Boys to Men, which is the division I'm in. So I'm waiting for that one to drop. But they haven't made it yet.
The other not
Viridian.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've looked. I keep looking, and one of the guys in my division hit them up a little bit ago, and they said they were going to make one, and it's on their list, but they haven't yet, unfortunately. So, I mean, yeah. Again, I'm just waiting for that to happen because that's the one I want. Some of the other ones I like. Honestly, the one from the company that RotoWear that made these that we're wearing, they had one that I liked, and it was kind of like a hippie looking thing. It was kind of cool looking, but I don't know. I just didn't pull the trigger. I'm still waiting for the Boys to Men one. But anyway, without further ado, let's bring on our guest Bob Lung to talk about some consistency. How's it going, man? Rocking the shirt. There you go. Which one's that?
This is the Turn It to 11 because it's SFB 11 from Viridian Global.
Nice.
So I thought it was cool just because I'm a huge fan of Spinal Tap and I got to get that one. So
yeah.
I'll be honest, man. I don't recognize all the shirts. There's so many bands. I looked at them. I was like, I don't even know. This is a lot.
I'm really into music, but there's a few that I went, who?
Yeah. I mean, obviously I know the bands, but I look at the shirt and I'm like, I have no idea. But yeah, they're all pretty cool. So if you're interested, go check those out. And they're all for a good cause, obviously as well.
Yeah,
so
right, yeah.
It's worth it.
So RotoWare does some, Viridian Global does some, and I know they both give a portion of it to Fantasy Care. So either way, it's a win-win for everybody. So
Absolutely. All right, Bob. So you've been on the show before many years. Thanks for coming back on, and
Thanks for having me, as always.
we love having you on. We definitely brought you on earlier this year for a good reason. We've got your Fantasy Football Expo coming up, which AJ and I are super excited to finally be able to attend. We wanted to go last year, and obviously the unfortunate happened.
Yes.
But for those who don't know what it is, go ahead and give your spiel, man.
All right, for those of you who are living under a rock, we're doing this little thing called the Fantasy Football Expo in the Pro Football Hall of Fame city of Canton, Ohio. The expo itself is on Sunday, August 15th, but anybody who can't get here that day, so if you don't live like close to Canton, Ohio, you want to come for the whole weekend, and we'll explain why. Because I know Joe and AJ are coming for the whole weekend. So Friday night. Drinking. Saturday night, drinking. No, I mean,
we are the Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. There's a reason why we're coming.
It's not just
I'm
that.
kidding. Yeah.
Your liver will be ruined. I will warn you. But we are just kind of hang out Friday night. But Saturday during the day, you've got three options. You actually have more options. You can do lots of things in Canton, Ohio. But here's the three options you can do for sure. 10 o'clock in the morning, our good friend John Lobb is putting on the first ever Kings Classic College Fantasy Football Competition draft that's going to be held in the Doubletree Hotel where the Expo is also going to be held. So if you're really into college fantasy football or just college in general, you can go down and check that out. They're going to be doing that, I think, at 10 a.m. that morning, doing that. So from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., is the Kings Classic Draft. All the best experts in the country are coming together at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We will be drafting there. It'll be broadcast live on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio during that same time period. But for those of you who are not in that draft, you can go to draftnightout.com and sign up for a draft competition that's going to be happening at the Canton Brewing Company, which is about 3 blocks up the street from the hotel. The guys there are going to be putting that together. It's only $30. There's all kinds of prizes, and there's going to be food and drinks and all kinds of good stuff to hang out with. They're going to do that from noon to 4. So check that out. Sign up for that. Go to that. If not, of course, you get a Hall of Fame ticket with your weekend package when you come. So you can go over, tour the Pro Football Hall of Fame, come in and say hi to us, drafting in the Kings Classic, and that's all part of the package price. Then Saturday night, party of all parties, will get together. 200 plus people will be at this party. All of us fantasy folks from all over the country are going to be there. Come hang with us at the hotel lobby at the Doubletree. Again, with your package, you get a wristband that'll get you into it. And we're going to have some special prizes and giveaways and stuff that you'll be able to take home with you that night. It's being put on by Fantasy Affair. Brian and all his gang are going to put together some amazing things. There's so much cool stuff. I don't even want to bring it up because I want everybody to be surprised. It's going to be so much fun. Then we'll all be hungover and go to the Fantasy Football Expo right there in the hotel at 10 a.m. the next day. From 10 to 11 on stage, in the main stage at the Expo, will be what I'm going to call the Mount Rushmore of fantasy. You're going to have at least, and this probably, I'm going to just throw out this list because I think they're all going to make it. Brad Evans, Mike Clay, Dave Richards, Andy Behrens, Mike Taglier, Michael Fabiano, Bob Harris. I'm sure I'm missing somebody, but those guys will be all on stage together, taking your questions, answering from, we're going to have an MC. His name's Nathan Zagura. You may remember him from CBS Sports a few years ago.
Yeah.
He now works for the Cleveland Browns. Nathan is going to be our MC, as long as the Browns don't play too far out of town. And so, they're going to ask their sleepers, their busts, but it's all about interaction. So crowd can ask questions, get their, meet these guys, kind of the best on stage. So that's going to be from 10 to 11 at the start of the Expo. The rest of the day, of course, we're going to have 45 booths with all of the top sites in the country, including Fantasy Six Pack. footballguys.com, IDP guys, Dynasty Nerds. Gosh, I'm trying to think of everybody.
I think NFL Draft Bible is going to be there. We'll be next to Beer Field Fantasy Football, of course. That was like the one I picked.
I got my old person glasses on. Here we go. Dynasty Trade Calculator, Full-Time Fantasy, Eat Sleep Fantasy, which is Sleeper Wire. They're putting on the draft night out. Fantasy and Frames, Fantasy Football Roundtable, Dynasty Madman, Fantasy Headliners, IDP Guys, Canton, Campus to Canton, Fantasy Football Affair, like you said, NFL Draft Bible, Beer Field, Fantasy Football Unlimited, Kevin McCurry's group, Ball Blast Girls, or the Ball Blast group. I guess it's not just all girls now.
Yeah.
Fantasy Foresight, DLF, Dynasty Rewind, Dynasty Nerds, Fantasy Six Pack, Clock Management, Flurry Sports, the Fantasy Commission, Fantrax, Football Guys, and I'm already in talks with NBC Sports Edge. I'm in talks with Monkey Knife Fight, talks with Fantasy Alarm. So it's gonna be. You just don't want to miss this, guys. Folks, girls.
And I'm sure there's other sites like us, like our booth. We're going to be giving away some stuff.
We
haven't totally finalized it, but yeah, I'm sure you said you got a slew of stuff behind you.
I've got a Keenan Allen and DeAndre Swift autographed jersey to give away from Clock Management.
Nice, yeah.
And,
we've got.
Fantrax is going to send me a Travis Kelce one.
Nice.
Yeah, so there's going to be cool stuff to win. It's just again, if you can make it, don't miss this.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to meeting everybody and for real. Just talking to guys on Twitter is so much fun, but man, I'd love to just actually meet people in person, get a beer with them, whatever it is, and just and
then the goal is this continues to grow. So as I mentioned to you guys off the air, the fantasy football, the Pro Football Hall of Fame Museum is building a village around it, like Cooperstown. I've never been there, but shops, restaurants, bars, their own convention center, their own hotel, all this stuff. And then we can spread this thing out to all kinds of locations on the campus. And we won't have to go anywhere. You can just walk to everything you need to go to. It'll just get bigger and bigger, and we'll go from 200-300 this year to 2,000-3,000 in 5 years. So that's the goal. We want this to be a destination that people put on their calendar every year. I mean, they're supposed to build a water park at this village. So I'm like, that's perfect. Wow. Now Dad can bring the wife and kids, drop them off at the water park, and Dad gets to spend the day football. Yeah, and everybody wins. Dad gets to do the vacation he's always dreamed of. Wife and kids are just as happy, and everybody's giddy. So
we all have to get our own room because I don't want to be there after a bunch of these. They don't want me in there after a bunch of these.
You don't want to go down the water park. You don't want to go to a water slide after a bunch of those. That'll get ugly.
Yeah.
But no, it's going to be a great time. I'm so excited you guys are part of it again. I know you were there at the beginning 2 years ago. Like I said, we only had 75 people that year, and I thought that was pretty good. And this year we're already at 250, probably going to hit 300 before we get. Man. And that's so I'm just excited, but I just want to thank the fantasy community because everybody's thanking me for putting it together, but it's really the community that's supporting this. I just built it and they came. So I'm just so excited that the community is behind this and supportive and wants it to grow and come up with their own ideas about doing, like the draft night out guys and the fantasy affair guys. And, everybody's coming up with cool ideas that just for the expo. And that's what's great about this community is that, it's not about one person like me saying, okay, well, here it is, and you're going to do it all my way. No, it's me saying, here's something we could do. Who wants to kind of help with it, and that's what's great. And everybody's chipped in, and, I've tried to be accommodating and say, hey, you want to do something? Let's do something. But also make it worthwhile for everybody to be able to be a part of as much as they can. Because I don't want somebody to miss out on one thing versus the other because they're at the same time too. So we're trying to, give people opportunities to do different things. But then, the big get together Saturday is what it's all about, kind of the hanging out together, meeting everybody, getting pictures. If you can't make it, you'll see a lot of pictures on Twitter, I guarantee it. So
be super really jealous.
Yes.
So, all right. Yeah, again, I'm looking forward to it big time. I'm glad you put it together, and I'm glad it's actually happening this year. But let's jump into your consistency guide here. You are the guy when it comes to fantasy football consistency in my book.
Thank you.
As you write the book, so. I ask this question every year, but just for those who haven't heard the show, the one that you're on, tell us a little bit about the book and why you decided to write it.
So, I started playing in 1985. 2002 is when I kind of came up with this consistency idea because my team went 500, but I had the MVP, Shine Alexander, on my team, and he was inconsistent as all get out. And I said, man, if he would have scored just one touchdown a week and it was a touchdown only scoring, my team would have won 2 more games. I'd have made the playoffs, won the championship. And then that kind of just sprung into, that should apply then for any type of scoring. And so really that just kind of escalated into me writing articles, fine-tuning the process. And then about 7 years ago, started my own website because I felt like it just had to be that way. I just couldn't, not that I couldn't get along with people and write for another site, but it just felt like I was lost in everything, and I wanted to kind of push my stuff into people's faces and say, hey, you need to have consistency. But I had been writing for a lot of magazines that you're buying on the shelf, but it was just a simple, here's consistency, here's some guys I pick, and that was it. And I kept asking the people who were the authors or publishers, I'm like, man, I said, we should create profiles and put this consistency information in their profiles in your guide to make it kind of unique. And they're like, well, we don't have enough room. And I got a lot of excuses, and I understood. I mean, it is what it is. But then about 5 years ago, I found out that I could self-publish on Amazon. I'm like, oh, okay, so let's give that a shot. And so I did. And then, after my second year, I sent it into the FSWA for, for submitting it for the best fantasy publication. And, I didn't expect anything. And then first year I got nominated, and I thought that was amazing. And then the second year I got nominated and won.
Yeah.
And I was
congrats
like, wow,
on that, man. Big time.
Yeah, thank you. And then the last 2 years I've also been nominated again. But the last 2 years, it's me, CBS Sports, NBC, Bob Harris, and Football Diehards.
Yeah.
And I don't remember who the fourth was. Maybe it was Roto World. Anyway, it's like, kind of tough, guys. I don't know. But, again, just to be nominated with that group and to be at the same level, to me is an honor. And I'm just kind of like the Expo. I'm just amazed that people have been so supportive and buy the guide and enjoy it and feel like it is worth buying every year. And I can't say thanks enough to everyone out there who does that. And so, I'm pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a fantastic guide. The link will be in the show notes wherever they're posted. So make sure you click on that,
or just
guys.
Go to Amazon.com.
Yeah, or just search for it. It's right there.
Consistency guide. It'll be the only one, I guarantee it.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty easy to find, but it's just in case, it's going to be right there for you guys.
Okay.
So over the years, you've kind of expanded everything within the guide itself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've added some new tools, just different facets of it, other than just consistency. So, tell us a little bit about some of those things that you've added, and what's new for this year.
So, I added xConsistency a couple years ago, and it was kind of a way of separating those folks that didn't play enough games, so maybe they were hurt, missed half a season. So their consistency may have been strong, but their total points were. So how did that play out? And so the xConsistency was kind of combining those two, fantasy points per game times their consistency number, to kind of get what I call the xConsistency, which was making more saying, okay, here's the difference. And perfect example, let's say like Darren Waller and George Kittle, both are 75% consistent last year. Kittle only played 8 games. Waller played 16. So obviously Waller was second in total points and Kittle was 9th. But the xConsistency shows that Darren Waller was 13.05. Kittle's was 11.73. So it showed that actually Waller had more value last year in the games when you're comparing apples to apples, and really could be classified as the number 2 tight end in the league last year versus Kittle, even though Kittle had a very good consistent season to that point. And then compare that then to TJ Hawkinson, who was also 75%, but his points per game were pretty lower. And so his xConsistency was only 8.17. So you can see there was a big difference, even though they were all three 75% consistent. That's what that xConsistency is there to do, is kind of separate those into kind of who's more productive on a game-by-game basis with the consistency combined versus not. So that's where that came into play. Last year, our good friends down in Brazil came up with the IDP consistency. I put that in the book. You can go to their website down there. I think it's brfantasyfootball.com. They've done an amazing job with that. So I put their stuff in. I don't calculate my own, but they use my my calculation and my algorithms, whatever you want to call them. And then this year, kind of highlighting the historical game, which is more of the, when you look in the profiles, there's a kind of consistency versus defenses. And, it's those kind of data sometimes that might be helpful in your DFS games or prop bets or whatever you're looking at, because what it'll show you is like maybe a guy's not very consistent overall, but maybe like when he's playing at home, the home away split might be 80% to 20%. I remember a few years ago, Ben Roethlisberger had like an 80-20 split home versus away. So that kind of stuff, that's where that historical game consistency will show in the profiles, and you can use that for, like I said, DFS or prop bets or whatever may be very helpful for this coming year. So that's out there, and obviously you can use that by looking at the profiles.
You mentioned that prop bet tool. I know you introduced that to me and Keith a couple of years ago when it first got out there.
Right.
How's that been? How's that grown over the years with you?
Well, not as much as I wanted to, because I've put so much time into the main stuff of the consistency that I really haven't been able to take hold of that. Okay. I'm hoping this year to spend more time with it and promote it more. I think the tool is very effective. I know last year through the first 3 or 4 weeks, I was comparing it against other sites that track how effective their tool is, and I was right there with them, about 60%, 55, 60% with the prop bets. The major prop bets. Like I wasn't doing every person, but basically on the majority of the starters, I was hitting around the same 55, 60%. I think it still can be fine-tuned and can do better, but really what the idea is it's showing the consistency of the player hitting that prop bet, not just Brady is, let's say Tom Brady's, this week playing against, let's say Minnesota at home. Okay, well, again, using that historical game consistency, we can look at all the games that he's played not only at home, but, against either, if Minnesota was a bad defense, so home against a bad defense, and it would show that, in those game scenarios, 5 out of the 6 times Brady has exceeded that 275 yards passing, where it may be skewed if you just looked at his overall, fantasy points or yards per game for last year, or just at home, or, you're not really pinning it down to any more specific and even if let's say the average was at 280 versus 275, maybe he had 2 games that were like 390 and the other games were all 250. Well, if you only went over twice out of the 6 games, then that's only 33%. That's what we're showing is a different way of looking at it and utilizing kind of the consistency calculation to determine whether that prop bet is, should go over or under. So that's what the tool is for.
Yeah, I know we used it at least 2 years ago. The person that was putting the bets in last year, I'm not sure used it, but last year, at least a couple of seasons ago, sorry, we were using it to kind of like he would put in his bets on it's
Thrive.
It's the big Thrive. Thank you.
Yeah.
And he would put in his kind of gut feeling picks, based on his own research and things like that. And then when it was those 50-50 picks is when he was like, all right, let's go look at Bob's tool and see what he's just got to say. And sometimes it would sway us and sometimes it wouldn't. Right. Sometimes we'd be right. Sometimes we'd be right. It was still just like a great, just more information, just more input into it. Like you're not always going to be right. Not everybody else is going to be right. That's not what you're there for. You're just there for more information. But it was great to just be able to look at that and be able to help us break it down a little more.
Cool.
So I've got a random question then that's not on the sheet here, but it kind of goes in with what we've been talking about with this historical consistency data. I mean, I think that's awesome to have because now you can track these players over the years instead of just, well, this is what they did last year. Well, now you see this is what they did last year. This is what they did before that. This is what they did before that. Obviously, some players would have dips because of injuries and whatnot. But if you have, like you mentioned, Tom Brady, so Brady's a good example because he switched teams. Granted, he's the GOAT, but so maybe he's not a good example. But how is it like? How would you look at? I mean, have you seen within the historical data that people who have changed teams might have that initial dip, or are some of them still fairly consistent?
Here's the thing: most players that change teams are, I'll call them middle of the road players. Very few times does a Tom Brady-esque talent player switch teams. So what you get is a lot of the middle ground folks. But and each time it's such a different situation. It's so hard to predict. You want to be excited about it, but then you're kind of like, like a perfect example was like, I was not excited about Stephon Diggs going to Buffalo because my thought was he was a head case. He, was fighting with everybody in Minnesota. He's going to go to Buffalo and, but wow, look what happened.
Yeah.
So, for every one of those, then you get, again, a different player. And I'm trying to think of somebody who switched teams last year. Emanuel Sanders, who, went to New Orleans, kind of did okay, wasn't great, wasn't terrible, but there wasn't enough one way or the other to get like so super excited. Now, Emmanuel Sanders, of course, is going to Buffalo as now kind of the number 2 with John Brown leaving. Should we be excited about that? I mean, 2 years ago, John Brown was 88% consistent before Stephon Diggs showed up. They do need a good number 2. Cole Beasley is trying to talk himself out of playing or at least not running for Congress. So, we don't know what Beasley's head at. So, it's that kind of stuff. There's so many factors when they change teams of the weapons around them, the talent of the quarterback, the offensive line. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. And, I wish there was a magical formula I could say, well, if it's this, this, and this, you expect an increase. If it's this and this, you kind of just – you look at schemes, you look at OCs, you look at a lot of stuff, and a lot of times you're just kind of like, there.
Yeah.
I will never say, yep, there's a perfect method, and because there's not. I mean, even last year, Brady started off kind of slow, and then once things started gelling, but then the other problem he had was, very rarely was Mike Evans and Chris Godwin on the field at the same time. When he did have them on the field, he was actually 80% consistent when they were both on the field together.
Which is
for the season, he was only 63.
Because he hasn't really had 2 great receivers like that in his career.
Right.
And now that he did, or once they were finally healthy, see what happens.
Yeah. And they got everybody back. Their line's all back. The running backs are all back. Defense is there. I mean, I kind of like Brady as kind of one of my undervalued guys because, everybody's, he's too old, he's too this, he's too that. Well, still Tom Brady.
He keeps proving us wrong.
He has a lot of wins.
He's an alien.
So it's kind of on the same page here, Bob.
Right.
Talking about like rankings with using consistency, and I know you do your own rankings with it. Like, how much does consistency play into your rankings? And an example I would have, and last year it was a little more extreme. This year it's a little closer. McLaurin had like an 80-something% consistency rating, and Hopkins was like 67% or something like that. Like, does that move them closer, or even possibly put McLaurin higher than like normal ADP or normal expert rankings would show in your book?
It does put them closer. I mean, this year right now, I'm looking at the rankings. I actually just kind of updated things more for ADPs than anything. And, I have McLaurin at, number 11, and I have Hopkins at 5. Now, that's still mostly because Hopkins has Kyler Murray and McLaurin has Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
If you switch quarterbacks, but am I going to pick McLaurin ahead of Hopkins? No. But here's the thing: I'm probably not going to pick Hopkins where he's going ADP wise, because I might get either a better running back there at that spot, and then maybe get McLaurin as then my wide receiver 1 in the next round. And I'm still happy because McLaurin will still have that consistency, because obviously if he can do it with freaking Haskins and Joe Schmo and whatever other, Joe Theismann or
Joe
Schmo back there, or Joe Bond or whatever was the quarterback. He can certainly do a much better job, I would think, with Fitzpatrick there. But they also then added Curtis Samuel, and so they've added some weapons to help, which should help him, because now guys aren't even can't double team him either. So McLaurin's definitely one of my favorite folks for that. ADP wise, I think he's still respected, but not super low. Let me see, he's at 310. So end of the third round. So if you can get him on that 3-4 turn, may not be a bad pick. Because again, if you got two really good running backs, then you can kind of put him in as your wide receiver 1. Maybe you come back on the turn and get Godwin or Allen Robinson or Keenan Allen. And now you've got 2 folks that are both over 75% consistent on an almost every year basis. That's going to really help your core team's consistency. And that's what it's kind of, in my opinion, that's what I always try to do, is that first 6 to 8 rounds, I want to have a core consistency of probably at least 75% of those 5 to 6 players. Because that way I can take a chance later on a rookie or a flyer or maybe an inconsistent guy to put as my flex. So that's kind of how I always build my teams, with the use of consistency and these rankings.
I completely agree. Like, a motto that you hear across the industry is you're not gonna win in the first few rounds, but you can definitely lose it in the first few rounds. So that's this consistency, which is something I kind of used I've used it for years, but like, you've written the guide on it, and like, once I saw it, like I say this every year, I was like, oh man, I gotta get connected with Bob. Like, this is perfect. This is exactly the way I think. So it's perfect. But like, it was funny because I was reading last year's and the question for this, and it brought up Kenny Golladay, but I was like, and he had a great consistency rating, but he was injured, and I think that leads right into our next question here that AJ is going to ask.
That's where I was going with it. So we talked about everything and injuries. How does an injury affect a player's consistency calculation?
Well, so it doesn't affect it because it's always based on total games played. So, if a person misses half a season and they were 75% consistent in those first 8 games or 9 games, well, then that shows you that, well, when they're on the field and healthy, they're still very consistent and worthwhile. But you obviously don't want to draft somebody that is like that every year. So I'll use my favorite example, Evan Ingram. This guy, when he's on the field, can be one of the most consistent tight ends out there. Problem is, you can't stay on the field. The other injury issue is a guy that is, toughs it out and plays through it, but really isn't productive. That actually kills you more from a consistency standpoint, because they're trying to be the tough guy for the team and get out there and play and power through it. But if you're relying on that guy and they can't, haul in more than 3 catches for 25 yards every week at tight end, it's not doing you any good. You'd rather start somebody that's going to have a better shot at scoring more points. So I'd rather have the person who kind of gets hurt and stays out and misses half a year, and you can at least get a replacement or, find somebody in a waiver wire or trade or whatever. So like I said, it really doesn't affect their consistency, because usually they don't try to toughen out. But if you remember Barkley, when he tried to come back too early a couple years ago, it kind of hurt him that year because he really just wasn't 100%. I think that made a difference, in his consistency that year. So, that's kind of how I look at it is, the people that are kind of that nagging injury, like George Kittle. He's another one, plays hard. Man, he bruises people when they try to tackle him. Problem is then it hurts his knees and puts him out for a couple games, and he comes back for a couple games, and and so then when you're looking between him and Darren Waller in round 3, and do you want to take that chance? Yeah, I'm going to go with Darren Waller because I kind of feel like I know he's going to play all the games. Now, he may not, and obviously you can't predict any injuries, but there's certainly guys that are more abused. Chris Carson's another one of them. Just goes out there and just knocks people over. Raheem Mostert, another person, just throws the body at people. Yeah. But that's great. But guess what? We don't get any points for knocking the guy over when he tries to tackle him. So step out of bounds, Raheem.
Yeah, please.
I agree.
Letting us rely on Tevin Coleman and McKinnon, at least last year. I mean,
Jeff Wilson.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those, like, it's you love to see that great consistency rating from these guys that played even 5, 6, 7, 8 games. But it's hard to trust it, especially if it's been over multiple seasons. You're like, well, who cares? Like, I need you on my team. I don't need you sitting on the bench for half the year. Right. So, especially with as many injuries we're getting now, and we're still going to probably have some COVID issues.
We're adding extra games, so now we got a longer season.
Yeah.
These guys got to pace themselves. I mean, I don't know how much that's going to come into play, and are we going to see more teams, by committee with running backs and wide receivers and tight ends because they've got an extra game and a little bit longer season to play through? But who knows?
Yeah. So moving on here, this was a question that a writer from our site, Mark Strasburg, gave us last year, but I want to ask it again just because it was so good. Guys, who are the worst consistency guys, right, that you might want to steer clear of for redraft, right? Because they're just, they're up 3, up 2 weeks, down 5, another 2, and then down another 3. It's like just so hard to predict when they're going to hit, right?
Right.
But in best ball, like, maybe they're a little more interesting. Like, who are some of these guys that you're looking at going like, yeah, they're going to win me, 6 weeks of a best ball league, or give me a really good chance in a best ball league that I'm willing to take them a little higher than I would in a redraft.
Well, so, quarterbacks are fairly consistent. So there isn't a ton of, super high but not consistent kind of players. Tight ends are just, we all know they're horrible. I mean, it's either Kelsey, Waller, Kittle, if he can stay healthy, and everybody else. So really, I'll focus on the wide receiver position because that's where you're going to see that fluctuation. It's those guys that 1 week are going to score 35 and then score 5 the next 2 weeks. The number one on the list for this year, based on last year's number, is a wide receiver who ended up 8th in total points, 50% consistency, and his name is Tyler Lockett.
Yeah.
And, with Metcalf there, I think Lockett is one of those guys that, man, he can put up some numbers, but man, he can put up some duds. And that was last year was a perfect example of that.
Well, most of those came early too, right?
Yeah. So, again, I think as Metcalf becomes the focus, one that draws their number one corner, sometimes even double teams to keep Metcalf in check. That's when Lockett can bust out for that big gain and have that 30-point game, 5 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown or so. But then the next week, maybe they don't double Metcalf and, now Lockett can't get as open. It doesn't get the catches. And, plus they focus so much on the running game. If they're winning the game and Carson's got 100 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns, then they don't need to throw the ball to Lockett. So, there's just a lot of stuff going on in Seattle that can really drive you crazy other than Metcalf. Wilson's pretty consistent too. The other 2 wide receivers are actually wide receiver corps, whatever you want to call them. So it's the Bengals and the Steelers. Both of those this year are going to be very difficult to trust any one guy to be your stud. If you can get any of those guys as your wide receiver 3, you're going to be better off. But each week, I think you're going to have a problem between Boyd, Higgins, and Chase of who's going to be the star of the week and who's not. Steelers the same way. You got Claypool, Deontay Johnson, and Juju. So I think both of those situations, both of those team receivers are going to be difficult to draft unless you're getting as like your 3 or 4. And you're probably not going to because they're going to go higher because, like I've seen Chase go ahead of the other 2. I've seen Chase be the 3rd one off the board, but same way with the Steelers. I mean, more often than not, I see Juju and Deontay Johnson pretty close. Claypool's a little bit later. But, I think they're all great best ball. Like if I'm drafting best ball, I think I would want all 6 of them if I can get them, but you're probably but I just think like, anytime you've got so many mouths to feed on a team like that, it makes it difficult for the consistency to have any real stability. I mean, I think all 3 of them could be 60, 65, and that's not bad for your wide receiver 3. But if you're drafting Boyd or Chase or, Johnson or Claypool or Juju as your number 2, that consistency could hurt you unless you just get lucky and find a couple back-end receivers to kind of make up for it. But those are my thoughts on that. And then a tight end, of course, Gronk is one of those classics where, he'll get nothing for 2 games and then he'll catch 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl. So.
Of course.
Yeah. Nothing for 15, 16 games.
Right. Exactly.
Catch 2 touchdowns.
And then it's the playoffs. I feel like playing football again.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Okay. I forgot I did come out.
It's like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar from Airplane.
Yeah.
My dad said you don't try except during the playoffs.
So moving on then, we want to talk about rookies a little bit because you mentioned them in the guide. But I mean, what are your thoughts on rookies as far as how have they changed? Especially with the wide receiver position, because we've seen a lot of really strong rookie wide receiver drafts. I mean, what are your thoughts on them in general?
So I do an article every year with data because every podcast that I do, I get that question because it's important to people. What do I do with rookies? They have proven nothing in the NFL. So in the guide that I do every year, the data is as such. So of the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends drafted since 2010, so last 12 years, there's been 476 of those players in only the first 4 rounds, so not later rounds, just first 4. So you assume that these are your better players. Of those 476, only 42 of them in total were over a 60% consistency rating or higher in their rookie season, which means 92% of them did not. Now, does that mean you don't draft a rookie? Not necessarily. The interesting thing is that of the rookies, of those 4 positions, 16% of the running backs have been successful. So the average was 8, or 8, almost 9. So 16%. So they're definitely the above average. Quarterbacks are at 9%, which is right about average. And then wide receivers are only 7%. Tight ends were 2%. There's only been 2 tight ends. 2 tight ends since 2010. Evan Ingram
was one.
and Jordan Reed.
Yeah.
Not Gronk, not Kelsey.
I knew the Evan Ingram one. That's funny.
I mean, you go through the rest of them. No Zach Ertz, no nothing.
Nah.
Like Kelsey was 0% his rookie season. Not even a blip on the radar that year. But so a lot of people are like, okay, what about Kyle Pitts? Well, again, where do you get consistency from? Opportunity, talent, with Julio Jones going away, and now you've got Calvin Ridley, Russell Gage, and now basically Pitts becomes number 3, you'd have to believe that he should be over 60% consistent. But, 2 years ago we had Noah Fant, TJ Hawkinson, all these great tight ends. Neither one of them were over. So not saying it can't happen, just saying temper your expectations. Last year we had a bunch of top rookies at wide receiver. And the interesting thing is the only ones that were over 60% was Justin Jefferson. And I think he was like the 5th. Wasn't he like the 5th wide receiver off the board? Like he wasn't. It wasn't the. It was
he
like
was still first round, but
he was first round. But like Judy and all these guys went first. Made it.
Yeah, Reagor stupidly went right before him.
Yeah.
I mean, you got guys like CeeDee Lamb, and you got Higgins and Ayuk and Claypool who went much later, and they were like the better. They were the better, receivers.
60%. So again, it's not that easy. Oh yeah, Ayuk actually did 67%. But in my opinion, the only reason Ayuk made that high was because
injuries.
Samuel was hurt, everybody was hurt. They didn't have anybody else but Ayuk to get the ball to.
Yeah, talented guy, but I get it.
Yeah.
I still think there's a little bit much to be said about the rookie receivers are making huge strides, like especially first 3-round guys. Like you can pay a little bit more attention to them, especially if they got good quarterbacks throwing the ball, much more so than like even 5-6 years ago. And if you want to go back 10 years, it's even probably worse. I don't have the data in front of me, but like I just got feeling that's what it tells me. I know our friend Scott Simpson wrote an article over on the Sports Gambling Network and the podcast network, and he breaks down a bunch of like the rookie receivers and how like they are improving drastically over the years. It's fantastic. So go check that out. But again, it still doesn't, prove what you're saying is wrong. Like they are still super inconsistent from when it all comes down to, the end of the year. Like you're talking 60% consistency. I mean, that means Lamb and guys like that probably had like 3, 4, 5 big games, and then the rest of them were kind of in the middle and below consistent. So like, you kind of want to steer clear from those. And I'll tell you, like you brought up Chase. I'm not touching Chase in drafts this year. His ADP is like hovering near 20 receiver range. There's much more proven guys. Like look, Chase could prove me totally wrong, but I'll go take his teammates 3 rounds later who are just as good. Like this is not worth it in my book. So.
Yeah, Chase is wide receiver 27. Boyd is 38 right now.
In your rankings?
No, on Fantasy Football Calculator ADP.
Oh, I've heard other ADPs and other like mocks where he's climbing steadily up into that like 20 to 24 range, and you're like, wow.
Yeah,
that's pricey for a rookie who's done literally nothing.
Right.
So.
Right. But it is going to be interesting because, and I don't know how often this has happened in the past, but when you realize that the 3 top wide receivers went to the same team that the quarterback they played with was in college. Yeah. And again, I don't have any data to support if that's happened much in the past at all, but it's interesting that it happened, and it'll be interesting to see how those 3 play out. Do they get special preferences because we've been buds before?
Yeah.
And, So just see how it works out. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely something to chart and see. I mean, I love the Burrow Chase past, and the idea of that coming to fruition again in the NFL. But Burrow's coming off a pretty major injury, so we don't know exactly what he's going to have right off the bat.
The offensive line still stinks.
Yes, so whether or not he gets injured again,
right?
And I'm not putting my juju on him. I promise you, I'm not trying to.
You've already ruined it, man.
He's already out. So, don't draft Joe Burrow at this point.
You mentioned him on the podcast. That's what matters.
But yeah, it's hard to want to go after that. I mean, I like stacks and trying to play that, especially in best ball, but
right.
I like trustworthy stacks much better.
Right. Yeah.
True. All right, so let's jump into some more specific players here and just quick rundown. Talk about some guys who you think will exceed or fall short of their current ADP based on what you think with consistency and how you look at things, and just give one of each: quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end. We'll start here with the quarterbacks.
All right, let's start with the quarterbacks. So I do an article for each one of these groups. It's in the guide. It's called the Consistent Undervalued Players. My favorite one at quarterback, and look, this guy isn't going to be your number one quarterback. He's going to be your backup. He's also going to be a really good value in your Scott Fish Bowls, so your Superflex 2 quarterback leagues. So this guy last year was top 14 in both total points and consistency at quarterback. Dare to guess if you haven't seen the guide already?
Joe Burrow.
No.
I'm kidding.
He played all 16 games, so no, it's not Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins.
Close. Cousins actually was 7th in consistency and 11th in total points, so he's actually better. But this guy's ADP right now is probably quarterback 25 to 28.
Oh wow!
And his name is Derek Carr.
Oh yeah. He always does. He does well in this format of Scott Fishbowl with all the turnovers and stuff.
Right. So again, a lot of it's garbage numbers. But is that going to change this year? No, not at all. Because they still got to play Kansas City twice, Denver twice, Chargers twice. So
playing catch
like
up.
I said, I was just in a mock draft I'm doing with Murph and the guys from England and a bunch of other people. We've done a mock every month. And so in round 16, the last round, as my backup quarterback, I took Derek Carr. Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Why not? And again, like a Scott Fish Bowl, a Cousins and Carr could be a really nice combo, actually.
Yeah, it's so tough though, man.
Their defensive suck. I mean,
it's tough to wait on them and hope you land both of them, because if you don't, then who are you stuck with?
Yeah,
it's just
right.
So you got to go to those guys, and Cousins does have those totally negative games where it's he had a negative 17-point game, didn't he?
13 yards, 3 fumbles, and
it was
all
atrocious.
Dalvin Cook touchdowns.
Yeah. I forget about the Scott Fish has the big penalties for their interceptions. So
and incompletions.
Yeah.
Now, see, that's where actually Carr is, I think, pretty efficient when it comes to percentage.
Last year he wasn't as good as in years past, because I was targeting him last year. I didn't get him, but I did target him. But he didn't do as well last year with the completion percentage as I thought he would.
No, he was definitely a little off last year. But
Stafford was also bad with that.
Don't remind me.
I blame you for Stafford.
Why? I didn't say anything bad about him.
You just talked about him. It's your fault.
Because you were talking about him, so I was just joining the conversation, and then by proxy, he sucks.
By proxy,
yeah, and everybody else who drafted him.
It's your fault. All right, so who's your quarterback that was going to fall short of expectations?
Oh, fall short. Oh, I didn't know I had to do one of each. Okay.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Fall short. Deshaun Watson? No, I'm just kidding. Fall short.
That's a gimme.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to say probably Justin Herbert, just because, it just seemed like second half of the year, teams seemed to be catching up to him a little bit. He was trying to figure him out a little bit. I think that's going to be tough. I mean, I'm not hugely into Jalen Hurts this year. I feel like he needs one more year under his belt. So from that standpoint, he definitely hasn't had the consistency in the past to prove anything. Like, he didn't put like 4 straight games together at the end of the year to kind of give me that confidence that, I could put him in the top 12, but a lot of people have, and I'm just not.
Nope.
Yeah, the rushing total helps him, but in Scott Fishbowl, something like that, like his efficiency numbers are going to kill him, I feel like.
Right.
But, that rushing total is going to help carry him a little bit. So,
sure.
Yeah. So what are you thinking on running back then? Exceed.
So running backs, so I've got a few here that I like. I'm trying to figure out which one I want to pick, though. All right, I'll let you guys pick. Mike Davis, J.K. Dobbins, or Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Which one are we talking about?
I would go CEH.
Exceeding?
Because I just traded him.
I think I'm
traded for him.
exceeding expectations because I feel like there's so many people off of him. It's probably CEH. Yeah, there's too many Dobbins truthers out there.
There is a lot of Dobbins troopers. I mean, Mike Davis is,
but his ADP is so low. I'm willing to buy it.
Exactly. So CEH last year, let's talk about him. So first off, let's all remember that if you wanted to put him on your fantasy team last year, you had to draft him in the first round.
Yeah. Not touching that.
Just like the Chiefs did in the NFL.
So he goes out behind a terrible offensive line that couldn't stay healthy, and he ends up earning a 77% consistency number, which ranked him 10th overall. Yet his ADP is like RB 18 or 19. Now, the Chiefs have greatly improved their offensive line in the offseason. Patrick Mahomes is 100% healthy. The rest of the team is all there. Why would we feel like CEH should drop now to a low RB2? So I'm drafting him in the second round or third round if I can get him as my RB2 in every team I can find, because if you're going to let me get Alvin Kamara and him on my same team, I'm giddy. I don't get it. So that's
the only argument I have against putting him much higher than that is that there was obviously a trust factor with the coaching staff and CEH. Like, they just didn't see something. And so I just kind of like, at this point, I almost wonder, like, I'm just waiting for that late veteran signing to like screw it over. That's where it comes from. Like, it's, but
we're bringing Bell back.
Yeah.
No, they're not doing that.
No. I mean, who would they bring back? Todd Gurley? I mean,
they brought Bell back last year. So, who knows?
Bringing back and using him is two different things. They brought Bell back, but they didn't use him much. I mean, and then CEH was kind of hurt himself at the end of the year, so that didn't help.
Yeah.
So that made it, that was kind of the thing we were talking about earlier, is CEH was trying to tough it out, but I don't think he was 100%, so he wasn't really performing as well as I think he could if he stayed healthy. But yeah, so I mean, like you said, I kind of like I mean, again, I'm drafting him as an RB2, so I'm drafting him at his ADP, but I'm just surprised because everybody's kind of like giving up on him already. Still plays for the Chiefs.
I feel like it's one of those, everybody got so burned by him last year.
Right.
They're just like, you're gone. And we're all just going to regret it this year.
Right.
There's one of the writers on Rob Lorge. He wrote a huge, he writes these long threads on Twitter about players, and he went on a rant about CEH and the same thing you just said, basically. So go search for him. It's a great thread to read. So
what about falling short in the running back category?
So the one guy that I just feel like ADP is way too high right now is Cam Akers. I'm not saying he's not going to be a good player, but going ahead of, I mean, right now he's RB11, going into the, beginning of the second round. So, people are drafting him before, Swift and CEH and Dobbins and James Robinson, which I get, he may or may not be sharing with ETN, but I'm just like, I'm not just 100% sold. It's kind of like Jalen Hurts. Like, I feel like he needs one more year. Like, he could have some good games, but I'm not sure he's going to be, again, to be drafted at that spot, you really, I mean, in my system, you have to be at a 70 to 75% plus consistency level to be worth being drafted at the end of the first, early second round. Well, last year he did put up 4 games out of the last 6, right? 67%. I mean, but now we switch quarterbacks. Stafford could throw the ball more. Will they run as much? I don't know. I just don't feel 100% confident yet that he's ready to take that leap. But
we'll get into that. We'll get into that like late hot consistency finish later with another player. But Akers falls into that range for me, and he was one of the ones I was going to ask about, but I decided to go another way. But that answer you gave there will apply to Cam Akers as well. So stay tuned for that one. But yeah, so jumping over here to receivers here, who's a guy who's going to exceed your expectations?
I got 4 of them that I just think that are just such a great value. So I'm just going to name them, and then I'll get into detail whatever one you want. John Brown, Russell Gage, Brashard Perriman, Emanuel Sanders. All 4 of these guys are wide receiver 55 or higher right now. Gage, I'll go with Gage because I think he's the one that I had him in this group before the Julio Jones trade. Julio Jones
I was gonna say
on the field.
Yeah, I was gonna say not Gage, just because I feel like he's trending up and people are getting in on him now because of the Julio trade. I'm sort of interested on your take with Perriman. Actually, I don't know, AJ, do you have a different one?
No, I mean, out of those 4, that's definitely the one I'm interested in hearing.
I liked Perriman last year, but like now I don't know what to think in Detroit.
Well, so the reason I put Perriman in there is, number one, his ADP is wide receiver 72.
It's pretty bad, yeah.
So you're practically getting him for free. He now is really the number 1 receiver beside Tyrell Williams in Detroit.
Who can't stay healthy?
Throw too. And if you remember, just a few years ago, he filled in for Mike Evans in Tampa Bay and had 5 straight clutch games at the end of the year with, I don't remember who was quarterback, Winston maybe. And so I feel like he's not
won the championship.
Right. And so, pure volume alone, again, if he can earn 65, 70% consistency, even if he gets 60% consistency as your wide receiver 5 or 6 and can play flex, maybe a good best ball candidate, I just feel like he's so grossly undervalued right now that, I mean, I'm picking him in any league I can get him at that late in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, you're arguably getting the wide receiver 1 on that team and at a wide receiver 6 value. It's crazy. Right. So I don't hate it. It's just somebody I'm not really targeting. If he's sitting there and I need a receiver, I'm probably pulling the trigger.
Yeah, when I put out the guide on May 1st, Russell Gage, this was before the Julio trade, was wide receiver 88. Now he's 57.
Yeah,
so
he's climbing.
Skyrocketed, but that still puts him as a wide receiver, 6? And, when Julio wasn't on the field last year and Gage was the second starter, he was 71% consistent over those 7 games.
I think people are too worried about Pitts.
Shooting top 24.
Yeah. I think people are too worried about Pitts, and I don't disagree. But, and obviously Matt Ryan is not quite consistent anymore, so it's not
he's not consistent, but they have to throw so much because, again, their defense is so bad.
And the running game's bad.
Defense is bad. Running,
Mike Davis,
you're going to have Davis.
He's not going to run that much.
He does catch the ball, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's just some extra factors, but yeah,
Which
losing
means more
Julio
throwing.
obviously boosts him up. But all right, who's your receiver that you're gonna think is gonna fall short?
Wow, that's a good one.
So many good receivers.
There's so many good receivers.
Receivers.
You
My
know,
favorite every year. I'm not gonna
I'm
say
kind
it.
of. I guess it depends on what your expectations are, but I'm not sure I'm too excited about Kenny Galladay in New York with Daniel Jones.
I do like him actually.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
No, I like him. There's
Oh.
some stats I threw in. I did the New York Giants preview in the article for the site, and as much as Daniel Jones isn't a great quarterback, but he throws a really good deep ball. He was the most efficient quarterback throwing the deep ball last season. That's Galladay's strength. I mean, Galladay's just gonna burn some people deep. He's a big guy. He can go up and catch the ball. So like that, they just fit each other. I feel like, and so like I actually feel like he's a little underrated. Guy, maybe if we're gonna if I could just ask you about one other guy, like what do you think about these Jacksonville receivers like Shark? He's a guy who's mid wide receiver 2 range in a lot of places, but then obviously people really like Chenault. Like, do you see both of these guys performing at the level that they're going at, considering it's a rookie quarterback?
That's what I'm looking, because I didn't think they were going at any level worth of crap.
Shark's 27 on my rankings, but
really,
it's his ADP.
I'm trying to find the ADP. Shark ADP, wide receiver 29. Yeah, that's a little too high. I have him ranked 42nd.
Wow. I mean, so I'm high. I like Shark a lot, but I've got Chenault a lot lower, but people really love Chenault. I get the talent's there, but I'm not sure.
Here's the thing: it's so hard to trust a rookie quarterback. I mean, we don't know what to expect. I mean, we can all say that, okay, he's going to walk in and be the stud he was in college. But again, you saw the numbers when it comes to consistency. 91% of the quarterbacks don't hit 60% in their first year, no matter where they're drafted. I mean, Baker Mayfield was 63%, got to play some games. So I guess it's, there's certainly possibility, but I just don't know if there's enough consistency from a rookie quarterback and these receivers to get me too excited about anybody from Jacksonville. Maybe if I can get him as a wide receiver 5 or 6, but then again, if I can get Rashard Perriman and Russell Gage and these guys at 5 and 6, I feel much more comfortable in those offenses with those quarterbacks and teams around them than I do about the Jacksonville guys. That's all.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, so we're gonna skip tight ends. I think we're gonna cover that here at the end. Here we got 4 more questions. Hopefully we can just rip through these. So, Pat Mahomes, he finished his QB4 last season, yet he had the highest consistency ranking of any quarterback at 93%. I mean, obviously his ranking is number 1, but like, do you realistically want him at his ADP over guys like Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, who, they might not be as consistent, but their overall points are going to be better? Or at least they were last year.
I guess, like you said, it just depends on, when I look at the ADPs, like you said, you see Mahomes going second round, and then you see Allen, Murray, Prescott going rounds 4 and 5. If it's that situation, no, I'm not taking Mahomes in the second round. I'll take, Prescott in 5 or Russell Wilson in 6. But every once in a while, you get into one of these leagues where everybody likes to play what I call quarterback chicken. Who's going to? How long is it going to take for the first one to go? Usually, Kings Classics almost always do that. So, I remember last year getting Mahomes in round 5. Yeah, because they want to be cool and not take a quarterback. So, I think I took Patrick Mahomes round 5, and then in the auction draft got him for $12.
Whoa!
Well, now it makes sense.
That's phenomenal value.
Yeah. And so trust me, I remember that now. Every year going in, I'm just going to take Mahomes. In fact, last year, I think I did it. No, it was last year was the first time it happened. The year before, I think Mahomes went much, much higher. And then, kind of had that injury and was, didn't play as well. So he was kind of down. So I think I brought him up first wave of, I'm like, oh, let's see what Mahomes goes for. And so, I'm like, we're going back and forth, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then just crickets. I'm like,
Nothing.
I'm like looking around,
Okay.
what the hell just happened? And then it was like,
Thanks.
sold. I'm like, okay. And the interesting thing is no other quarterback went over him except Lamar Jackson. And he went $1 higher. So like I said, nobody wanted to spend money on quarterbacks. So, but anyway, I love Mahomes. I love his consistency. If he stays healthy, you're going to get 90%. It's just almost a given. And, that's the thing is you may still get that out of a Kyler Murray or a Prescott or a Wilson, but then again, you may get 75%, which isn't terrible. And they may get some higher points or be close in points, but it's those 2-3 clutch games that they miss that, if you miss the playoffs by one game, may make the difference. So, but again, drafting a quarterback in round 2 in a non-super flex, it's a little rough for me. As much as I
agree.
It's just a little much.
Yeah.
Especially mid. Like I said to somebody, look, if I got the number 1 pick and I get McCaffrey and then Mahomes makes it back to the 212, then I might go McCaffrey, or Mahomes and, whatever, a wide receiver or another running back, because why not? Then maybe. But then I'm basically could say I'm took him in the 3rd round. But, again, depends on the draft, depends on how players are being picked and what's available. And, I can adapt. I think any of us that have been playing for a long time can adapt about anything, because you'll make it up. I'll get if I don't get wide receivers early, then I'll get some of the guys like Gage and Perriman and, switch, stream those guys to cover some of my deficiencies, maybe at the top wide receiver position. But, I always feel like I can always find receivers in the waiver wire and that kind of stuff. And it's hard to find a top quarterback and a top running back that late. So.
Yeah, especially now, people taking backups during the draft. So, all right, AJ, this is the question I was talking about that AJ's going to ask here about the late game consistent guy. Or late season, sorry.
Okay.
David Montgomery ended the season last year with 6 straight consistent games. So how much are you actually trusting him to be even close to that consistent for 2021?
I am pretty comfortable with that because I think he proved in his opportunity as the guy that he could hold his own. Now, I'm not saying that their coaching staff aren't idiots, because they are, because they didn't let him have the ball with more opportunities prior to this.
Jeff's a Bears fan, by the way.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, this is funny.
Tyree Cohen's coming back, but, he had a pretty significant injury. He's not getting any younger. They got to, they could be starting a young quarterback, fairly soon in the season, depending on how their games are, whether they're winning or not early on with Dalton. But I have to believe that the coaching staff would just be so dumb not to give him those opportunities. Now, again, it's a long season, so, get Cohen in there, get his touches, especially if they're, give him a series break or two. But you've got to give Montgomery at least 20 touches a game. This kid is way too talented. He proved it last year. That second half of the year was, in my opinion, what you needed to say. But that doesn't mean the coaches aren't, like I said, aren't egotistical idiots. See Adam Gase for more examples. Just because they have talented players doesn't mean they know how to use them. And certainly Matt Nagy was one of those. So we'll see if, I'm going to draft him as my RB2. I totally have no problem with that. Again, it's kind of like CEH or one of these other guys. If I can get him, what the heck is this? Where's he at? Like wide receiver. Montgomery is at RB24, round 4. So again, if I can get him as my RB2 in round 4, I'm good with that. Is he going to be 73% consistent in fourth and total points? He may not be, but I think he can at least withhold and maintain the consistency. If he's still top 12, I'm still happy with the points. And he missed a game,
round.
so, yeah. So I'm good with him, yes.
All right.
So another guy here. So we talked about injuries earlier. Michael Thomas is a guy who dealt with both injuries and, less than stellar quarterback play, even when his true starter was on the field, and so he finished with a pretty terrible consistency rating of 43%. People still have him pretty high in the rankings due to previous seasons, for good reason, but he's gonna be dealing with Winston or Hill again this season, or a combination of both. What do you expect from him this season, and do you think he gets back to his more consistent ways, or are we going to see him struggle because he's dealing with Winston and Hill?
Yeah, that quarterback situation just scares the living bejesus out of me. The switching back and forth. How much is Winston going to play? I feel like, look, if they came out and said we are committed to Winston being the starter and he will not come out except for certain trick plays with Hill, then I would actually give Thomas a little more love, because I think that at least Winston has a better arm to get the ball to Thomas more. And he'll certainly focus on him and target the crap out of him. But if they're doing a lot of that Taysom Hill like they did last year, a couple of those games where it was, they're winning games 16-14 and 12-9 because they're kicking field goals all day long. I'm not real happy about that scenario.
I'd say the only good thing about I was gonna say the only good thing about those games with Hill was it just felt like the only receiver he could look at with Thomas. So he was catching 10 to 12 passes, and it was just like, okay, fine, thanks PPR,
thank you, volume.
Yeah, that was it though. They were pretty terrible stat lines, honestly, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that he only had 3 clutch games out of 7 in the games he did play just tells me that that's kind of an ugly situation. I have Thomas ranked in the top 10, but I don't think I've been in any mock drafts yet where I was like, ooh, here's a good time to take Michael Thomas. I was kind of like, oh, well, I could take Michael Thomas, or I could take Chris Godwin. Ooh, or take Chris Godwin.
I'm passing on him all day, but I'm with you, man. I've got him in the top 10.
Confusion.
Yeah. All right, last question we got here, AJ.
All right. So, needless to say, obviously, the tight end position after Kelsey and pretty much Waller at this point, maybe Kittle if he stays healthy, it's pretty much a shit show. So, is there anyone who you will take a little early? You don't really have to worry about him, but is just a lack of total points not worth it to you?
Again, looking at the ADPs, like Hawkinson at round 6. Okay, 75% consistent last year, 5th in total points. Not a high point total, but still 5th. Probably I'd be okay with that. But honestly, what I've been doing in most of the mocks or actual drafts that I've done so far is one, if I'm a late first round, I might take Kelsey at the end of the first or at the turn in the second. If not, if Waller can make it to the 4th, I'll take him there.
Ooh,
but
that'd be rich. That's not happening in most leagues. I wish.
Not happening in most leagues, but you never know. But more often than not, really what I've been doing in most drafts is around rounds 8, 9, 9, 10. I'm drafting Robert Tonyan and Logan Thomas back to back as my tight ends, because one, they both were very consistent last year. They were both in the top 6. One was 5th and one was 7th. One was 6th, one was 7th. they were 4th and 5th in total points. Let's say Aaron Rodgers doesn't play. Well, guess what? Now you got a rookie quarterback or a young quarterback in Jordan Love. As much as he'll love to look at Devontae Adams, he's probably going to look at Robert Tonyan just as much.
Yeah.
So I feel like he'll still be okay. I think Logan Thomas will still be beneficial with Fitzpatrick there.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like if just one of those two break out, getting them in rounds 9, 10 didn't cost me a lot of draft capital. And if they both pan out, then I start one as a flex or trade bait or whatever. Another guy I like is like somebody like Jared Cook or even Austin Hooper, who again are practically free. I think Cook is ADP tight end 20, and I think Hooper's like 26. Well, what people don't realize is that you're talking about second half seasons. Hooper was 67% consistent last year in the late, second half of the year, because him and Mayfield started really clicking because of the teams were focusing on Landry and Chubb, and teams were kind of clogging the box to stop the run. Well, Hooper gets past the linebackers and boom, he's wide open. So, it's those kind of guys that I think you can take a chance on late, and again, take two of them to be safe. And I think that, that, in my opinion, is the best way to, it's kind of a boom or bust. You either go for Kelsey or one of the big boys, or you go for a little bit later and pick a couple, and hope one or both work out. And I think that their consistency and their late seasons of these four guys, in the situations that they're in, Jared Cook and replacing Hunter Henry.
Yeah, I'm all about grabbing one of those first two. It's basically Kelsey or Waller for me. Like, I love Kittle when he's on the field, but
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, if I don't get one of those two, I'm just waiting. Like, I don't even care anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to stab the 10th tight end and hope he becomes a top 5 guy. Just
Right.
doesn't seem like it's worth it at this point. I'm just gonna wait. Anyway, that's it for the show, man. I want to thank you again for coming on. It's always a good talk, great information, and again, consistency is something that I believe in big time. So I always love talking about it with you. Appreciate it. The guide is great, guys. Go check it out. Go look for it on Amazon. We will throw the link in the show notes. But Bob, before we let you go, just remind everybody where they can find your stuff on the internet.
So you can find me on Twitter at Bob_Lung. Of course, the BigEyeFantasySports.com. Then the Fantasy Football Expo. If you want to get your tickets, get a booth, whatever you don't want to do, definitely come to Canton that weekend. Hang out with all of us cool guys and girls. There's some cool girls there.
Actually, yeah.
And so it's going to be a great time. And again, thanks for having me, guys. Always a pleasure, and always love chatting with everybody here at the Fantasy Six Pack.
All right.
Awesome.
Good times, man.
Much appreciated. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks.
Have a good night, man.
All right. Have a good one. Take care.
See you, Bob.
All right, AJ. That's it for the show. Next week we are doing, I think we're jumping back into our preview shows on, just want to make sure I get the date right here. So because we are mixing it up every now and then. Oh, actually, yeah, you won't be here.
Thursday.
Well, maybe you will be. Who knows now? Yeah, we'll figure it out. But back to Thursday next week on July 8th. We're doing the AFC South. But before that, on Tuesday, July 6th, we're doing our Scott Fishbowl charity show to raise money for multiple sclerosis. You can check out my Twitter. It's my pinned tweet, about what's going on with that. And there's a link to donate. But check in to that show. It'll be starting around 9 o'clock. And we're going for a couple hours. We got a ton of good guests. So I'll be tweeting about it in the next day or two about whoever's coming in. We're just trying to confirm everybody totally before we do that. But it's going to be a good time. We did it last year. We raised about $550. I'm hoping to go over that for sure. So definitely check that out on Tuesday. We'd appreciate it, and anything you can do to support is much appreciated as well. But yeah, other than that, we are out of here. So cue the music.